Welcome to That's Rad, Life, Love, and Wedding Planning in the Pacific Northwest, where our goal is to educate and elevate. I am Radhika, planner and owner of Rad Occasions, and today we are doing something a little different and chatting with two of our past couples who share a venue in common, the iconic Hatley Castle. First, let's hear from Chris and Alex from Atlanta, Georgia, who hosted their destination wedding this past year, that's 2025, and worked with us to plan their entire wedding shortly after booking their venue. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a while since we've seen each other.
I know, too long. I feel like I'm going from seeing you every week or talking to you every week to right. But
Well,
you were
I
probably
mean,
sick of us.
no, I wasn't. I kind of missed you guys actually at the end of it.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Luckily, we've still talked plenty since.
That's true. I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind sharing where you're recording from and your pronouns for our listeners.
Yeah, do you want to go first?
Sure. We're coming from Georgia, and I am he, him.
And your name
It's Chris Thompson. Sorry.
and Alex Color and he.
Awesome. So I know I've heard your engagement story, but do you mind sharing your engagement story one more time with everybody who's listening?
Yeah, you want to tell?
You can.
So we were kind of an interesting story. We actually never got engaged technically. So until I guess our marriage story, we originally dated in 2016 for a solid summer. Chris was living in Seattle. I was living in Seattle. And then I got the job at Delta. I did not want to be a Georgia boy and I did not want to move to the South. And so I stayed put in Seattle and we parted ways. Fast forward to 2023, not seeing each other in 7 years. And I, like a normal millennial, decided to slide into his DMs and just see how he was doing. And forward from there, it just was like, it clicked. That must have been summer of 2023. And by January of 2024, we actually went to a courthouse in Seattle and got married. So did the whole legal thing, knowing that we would want to do something bigger, sort of the more formal wedding, or as he said to the judge that day, our real wedding later on. And
Decided to get a layover in Seattle and catch up, just get dinner and catch up. And the second we saw each other, we just knew. So that's why
I love that.
it's the shotgun wedding.
Yeah. What did the judge, the real wedding comment?
she just laughed.
She didn't really react.
Yeah, I think she thought it was funny.
He was like kicking me under the table, like, shut up.
She hadn't signed it yet, so
Yeah, you don't want to offend anybody today.
we still need that license.
Did you always want a destination wedding?
Yeah, I think it comes down to that with my family mostly from the West Coast and his mostly from the Southeast. We just knew that there was always going to be some part of a destination wedding in the sense that at least more than half were going to be traveling no matter what we chose. And so we originally started looking at just areas that were special to us or that we really liked that would be reasonable travel for everyone.
I had the misconception that a destination wedding was like Hawaii or Europe or exotic place where really it's somewhere not home. Realistically, it was going to be a destination wedding for everyone, except Jimbo. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't want to do it in Atlanta and he didn't want to do it in Seattle. And we started looking everywhere.
Originally, Victoria was not on our radar. I had gone a few times as a kid, but originally we looked at Palm Springs,
Then
Denver,
Salt Lake City,
all over the place, and just did not find something that clicked really for 4 months. It was a lot of looking. At that point, we didn't have Red in our lives. And so it was us reaching out to venues and doing all of that work that we had no idea what we were doing. And eventually got very lucky when we found Hattie.
thanks to his mom.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yes. Yeah. My mom,
It was her second recommendation.
her first was awful. It was like
Airport hotel by Seattle, Tacoma Airport.
no idea why she said that. And then, the second one, she sent me just like a few pictures of Hatley, which I guess I vaguely knew about, but I wasn't super familiar with. And I remember like the first time I showed it to Chris, it was just like yes, this is right. It had everything we wanted. And Victoria sort of, once we started researching it, had checked all the boxes on what we were looking for in terms of a place that we felt like it was a really unique city, somewhere that we felt okay asking people to travel to.
Somewhere that we could have an entire weekend planned.
Yep.
And could hold as many as we were originally thinking.
Yeah.
Of 225.
Many. And so, it just clicked after so many starts and stops and disappointing conversations with venues. It was amazing that it just sort of worked out.
I mean, coming from, I had never really thought about marriage terribly much beforehand. And so the second we saw Ellie, it was
Yeah.
a done deal.
Yeah.
And then we had that picturesque fairy tale wedding.
Complete with peacocks.
Complete with peacock.
And
You saw how
things.
excited he got.
I know, I did see.
Lost his mind.
Tell me what some of the disappointments were when you were working at venue.
Lack of responsiveness. Gosh.
Lack of flexibility. They were a nice venue, but then it was, cater, their bar, their MCJ, like everything. They sort of had packages where you could tell that it was just very much, they churned out weddings a day because of the way that they had it set up. There's something like that where when you're paying that much money and you're being rushed through the experience, it almost feels like Disneyland, right? Of like, get on the ride, get off. There were also just a lot where price point, there was some sticker shock in some venues.
There was only one that we saw in Seattle that we would have even considered, and it was probably double the cost of hat. And they took a 15% vendor fee for everything.
So anything you brought in.
So I know you booked Hatley before you started talking to planners. So when did you decide that you needed a planner?
We decided very early on, but we had made the decision to hold off on finding one until we knew the venue because we really wanted to make sure that whoever our wedding planner was also our day of coordinator. I just had been to enough weddings to know that it can be very chaotic sometimes when you have those two split and you have this poor soul day of trying to like sort of drink it all in. And so obviously we were thrilled that we made that decision. And I credit Chris. I mean, actually,
I was just Googling and I was trying to find someone that looked friendly, but I was also looking for, like, I was going through their past events looking for Hatley. We wanted somebody that was familiar with especially kind of talking with Hatley initially and kind of how rigid they were with some things. We wanted somebody that had experience at Hatley that could help navigate their complexities.
I think it's also worth pointing out, when we started planning, one of the goals we had was as much as possible to hire vendors who were either queer or POC community or female, but obviously in the wedding industry, that's a little bit easier to find. So that was absolutely something that factored into it from like the search perspective.
And that's completely fair because I feel like how are you going to know if you're going to be feeling seen and heard if you've got somebody who's never had that perspective before?
Yes. Like how much am I going to have to advocate for myself day one?
We noticed that just our planning process, we noticed the difference.
So with that, have you seen any red flags and green flags when you were interviewing vendors?
I remember looking for, like, in their past events, did they have LGBT weddings? How did they, like, we noticed right off the bat applications or forms, info forms, like if it was bride and groom or if it was, what was it, spouse one, spouse two or something like that.
Chris and I are not the type to get offended easily. Like we had these almost comical interactions during the wedding planning process that understandably probably would have upset other people. Like an hour into our tux fitting, they asked where the brides were. And we had just spent an hour talking about our wedding. We left being like, did they think it was like some sort of a cult wedding? Well, I don't know. Yeah.
I just figured we'd share the costs and split it 50-50.
Yeah. But things like that, I feel like you just can't let it get to during the process. But overall, I would say that we always looked for vendors that were excited, even if they didn't have specific experience working with a couple, that they were excited about it and that they understood that it was going to probably force them to get creative or think outside the box in some way. And I think that really worked out for us, right? We had an amazing team all across the board of vendors who just really leaned in and it felt amazing.
Yeah, I'd say we 100% succeeded in that.
So I know you guys mentioned the forms. Is there anything else that you kind of feel is like room for improvement in the wedding industry as a whole? I know that's a really big question, so don't feel like you need to have all the answers.
It's probably just assumptions. I mean, like the tux fitting, like assumed it was male and female, even though we were standing right in front of them. But
I think the general heteronormativity of it. So like, I think there are a lot of gay couples who are interested in and like do want to have a wedding and are just so intimidated or just don't have the energy to put up with what they see as an industry that is entirely not even trying to meet their needs. And I think that there's also a layer, because I know I felt it, of like, it's very intimidating. right? You all of a sudden are planning an event where the industry doesn't necessarily know how to cater to you. And so then you have to come up with a lot of it, or like think about how you want to address it. And that's actually something that is sort of spun up a side project for me of like, how do you help people navigate that so that it doesn't feel intimidating and instead it feels exciting and interesting? Because like Tara, our photographer, we talked about it, and she says that she has straight couples reach out about the queer weddings she does just because they feel not cookie cutter. And I think there's something fascinating there, right? Of like, how do we just get everyone to think outside the box and really plan like the event that is special to them instead of what you've seen 800,000 times on Pinterest?
No, everything's geared towards straight couples.
Yeah.
Female dominated,
Yes.
and then religious also. So a lot of the
So I think that's
difficulties
really,
died down.
yeah.
But a lot of that was just navigating how do we make it us, rather than just doing the script that everyone does.
And I feel that too with like even seeing some photographers talk about like in the States talk about how a lot of things that were broken by tradition were broken by queer couples. And now that heterosexual couples feel like they can also rewrite because it was first taken down by queer couples. And I find that interesting because one, I feel like maybe being in the space that you're in, you can just make your rules right off the bat because you don't have to like force yourself into any sort of box like a lot of heteronormative couples might. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I think you're spot on. I think that something that we are lucky to not have is the pressure that most men feel as soon as they start planning their wedding. And I remember as we were doing our wedding planning, I'd read like subreddits about weddings, and the way that some of the posts were written to just feel the heaviness of the person. Yes, like just they feel like they owe something to everyone else that's going to be coming. And I was always that person that was like, you do you, screw everyone else. Like this is your day. And I feel so strongly about that because as a gay couple, it's not something that you take for granted. I mean, even here living in the US, we got intentionally married in Seattle and not Georgia. Like we still have to very much think about our rights. And so when we started planning this day, I felt very strongly that it needed to reflect us and it needed to be sort of unapologetically queer as
I was going to say gay, but
gay, as our probably made clear.
Do a lot of people still think that you guys are a throuple with Jimbo?
At this point, I think they've caught on, but there were definitely some confused faces during that ceremony.
I feel like Jimbo probably got more confusion than us.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
who did you get married to?
but no one can replace Brady.
No one can.
He's lovely.
So I'm getting like really deep here, but where do you think that you learned things about yourself in the planning process?
I would say I didn't necessarily, I didn't learn this. The new trait that really highlighted it was my procrastination and lack of, I won't say lack of drive, but I would put stuff off because I didn't like dealing with it.
Mm.
And then that only led to frustration from both of you two. So it put undue pressure on him by not kind of doing my research or whatever, because I looked at it as we hired a wedding planner. This is their job. But at the same time, it's our wedding, not your wedding. So if you were to just go do what you wanted to do, you wouldn't have had clients. So yeah, it was just to like remind myself. And he did plenty of reminding for me that it's our wedding. We need to make it us.
You did do a great job, Dylan. In those moments where we were being indecisive, because neither of us really had ever thought about planning a wedding, and there are so many decisions you just never think about until this happens. And you did such a good job of helping us be decisive and on like almost choosing for us by like giving us A or B. And then other times you just let it simmer. And it's because I look back and it's like those were the things that mattered and you knew it. And so even when we didn't have an answer for you 3 weeks in a row, you would just push it off. And like I'm sure that was infuriating, but we really appreciate it now because like looking back, we had a day that was like just uniquely us. I'd say for me, what did I feel like? For me, it was the control freak in me, letting it just sort of go. Like I obsessed over every single detail for months, and it was to a level that was probably unnecessary, was unnecessary and unhealthy. And then once the day happened, it's incredible. The whole weekend was incredible. And I wish I could go back a year and just like talk to my past self and be like, de-stress yourself. You'll be fine.
Like we had all these details that we wanted to do, and it was so many people were like, "Don't." Like people are not going to remember that you put a tiny initial on your napkin.
Finalizing music for the ceremony, like exactly what song.
I think I heard 3 songs.
I didn't hear any song because I was looking for my parents.
Gosh, should we talk about that? Have you talked to your parents? Should we talk about this? I haven't talked about it publicly.
Yeah, so I'll give the context for the listeners. Probably 2 minutes before the ceremony is supposed to start, Red very calmly came up to me and asked where my mom and dad were because we had gone on a different bus and they were supposed to be driving themselves. And that is just true Cutler fashion to be running late. And so I was like, I'm sure they're here. I pulled up to find my friends on my phone, and they were in the Costco parking lot, not Hatley Castle. And you could hear the music starting down in the garden. And that was a panic moment, but also like just you were so calm. So it kept me calm. I just knew that somehow we would figure this out. What it turned out to be is that through a slight communication misfire between Chris and my mother, she thought that they had no food for the cocktail hour. So she went and bought enough hors d'oeuvres and sushi and vegetables else to feed 180 people. That car was full when they pulled up. I was so confused, and I, in the nicest way possible, said, "Get out of the car and come down the aisle right."
I text, they don't have any, like we were hungry on the bus. So I text her saying, "Can you get us some food? Because they don't have any food for us." She took that as there's no food for anyone.
That's my lovely mother.
And she took the initiative to go buy everyone food.
I think it was about 15 minutes before, and I was like, oh, they're not here where they're supposed to be, and we should find out where they are. And we like white lied a little bit too about how far away they were because we didn't want you to panic. We did have an hour and a half cocktail hour planned, so it kind of worked out, and everyone got to enjoy the gardens a little more.
I feel like that time waiting for them where Jimbo got to meet our wedding party a little bit more was actually really great. Because I think, preparing a lot of our wedding party for what the ceremony would be, some of them I think had mixed impressions. And like I know my side, they all fell in love with Jimbo just from that 10 minutes they got to spend.
Yeah. And I love seeing kids interact with Jimbo too in drag. And because like my son's only ever seen him out of drag, and he has no idea that Jimbo in drag, out of drag are the same person. And he keeps on saying, I want to meet Jimbo. And he asks for photos from your wedding and the videos. And he thinks that Jimbo that he's met in out drag is a different person.
I was asking my niece if she,
I wouldn't know. I mean, she thinks that's Dolly Parton still. She met Dolly Parton, which will confuse her later when she.
Well, because then the month later, we got a video with Jimbo again because Jimbo was in Atlanta. And we made a video from my niece as Dolly Parton now.
It was great.
So is there anything that you would do differently besides maybe telling your parents not to get you food?
Do differently.
I feel like
tried more stress-free prior. We tried to do too much ourselves and we pushed it off till the end. So then we were stressing.
Yeah, we
like welcome bags.
You guys made the bitters, you made the keychains.
Yep. Yeah. So 80 welcome on a heat press, and then how many bottles of bitters, and then 150 leather keychains, all by hand in the weeks before the wedding.
The days before.
It was chaotic. And that the thing that I'm torn between is all those things I think were like special touches. We just should have asked for help way sooner.
Or just paid someone to do them.
Or that.
Yeah. I know you mentioned that, like, sometimes that like waiting for decisions might have been infuriating for me. But the thing is that I've gotten to that point where it's not my wedding, it's your wedding. You guys have mentioned this already. The only thing I do remember is the welcome bags. And you guys said you were going to do them yourself. I remember getting off that call and sending Rob "these gays are trying to kill me" meme from White Lotus. Because
we're so proud of that.
And it was really just because I was nervous about the bags not getting here. And I was like, I would just feel so much better if they like came to my house and I had them in my hands.
Well, the night before we flew to Victoria, I think I got 1, maybe 2 hours of sleep because we were working on those. And then he got no sleep that night working on those.
And then we still left them at the house. That was the amazing part. And
we forgot the keychains at the house and we had to have a friend pick them up. That's what we were doing. So going back, that's what I would do is well beforehand, pack everything and not try and do it the night before.
Yes, I don't know about you, but like I always see Rob pack for any trip and he doesn't have a checklist. And I'm like, how do you know you're not forgetting anything?
You can buy underwear on the road.
I have a lot of phone chargers for that reason.
Okay. Noted.
I think
And
maybe
then
it's a guy thing. I don't know.
maybe. What's the standout moment for you guys from the weekend?
Well, you stole it because it was going to be when you told us after the reception that you told Rob, you sent Rob the meme that these gays are trying to kill me.
I'd say the second most, for me at least, was like having Jimbo come down the aisle and seeing everyone's reaction. I was so nervous for that moment because we had a lot of people at that wedding who either had never seen a drag queen or we weren't quite sure what their feelings were and
Or deeply like
deeply religious.
religious.
And we didn't want them to be offended. We wanted them to understand what it was about. And I think just as soon as Jimbo started coming down the aisle, I had this rush of relief of like, this is the moment I was hoping for and how I was hoping it would go. And I could just Jimbo had it right. That he was, I mean, he did an incredible job of the ceremony, incredible job at the reception. I'm like, I just was calm, right? I wasn't anxious. I wasn't bracing for what was going to be said. It was amazing. I truly could not have asked for something better.
We pretty much gave Jimbo full creative authority with the ceremony. With the words, he knocked it out of the park.
Do you have to ask? I know we had sent Jimbo your notes for roasting your wedding party. Were you expecting Jimbo to read those out loud, word for word?
I assumed Jimbo was going to Jimboify them.
I mean,
Which he did. I thought he would take those and kind of like make it his own.
there were a few though where,
Yeah, that's a flair.
yeah, there was a lot of flair in it. I will say that. But
It largely was what we wrote.
yeah, when he started to read my friend Tim was tone deaf. I was like, and trying to sing.
I mean, after the fact, I think it was when he was here in Atlanta and we were hanging out with him. We asked about that. And he goes, "Oh no, like that was on purpose. Like
I love that.
that's the best you can do is your own words." So
Yeah.
he's like, "I don't know these people. You do."
That was no. I mean,
I would
really took it well. Yeah.
I would have done more if I had known that's how that he was going to read them.
Is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up today?
I don't think we'd be able to thank you and your team enough, you, Rob, and your team enough because you made everything go off behind the scenes, on the scene,
Also,
without a hitch. Like
it's incredible for how much stuff we did ahead of time to prep. It pales in comparison to like once we landed in Victoria and we started having it Thursday that week, never really worried about a single detail. And like, it just still baffles me to this day how much you took on for us. And you have a small but mighty team. And like, it seriously made the weekend for us to have you have our back.
And
That's
like I would imagine there's not a single wedding that has ever gone off without a single hiccup. And even when there was a hiccup, the way like you came across or Rob came across to us was just so calm, cool, and collected that it made us remain calm, cool, and collected. Whereas you come freaking out,
Yeah.
we're gonna freak out.
Yeah.
100%.
So that was much appreciated.
That also sets the tone for your guests too.
I didn't even think about it that way.
No, I think we had a vision in mind. And part of that was we're bringing, I mean, his side of the family, 2,800 miles away. And so we wanted to make sure that we had some like,
Something every day.
yeah, something every day and like that we're present with them. I think that was the word we kept using, was like being present with them. And I think it went great.
Isn't it as you can be when you're entertaining 115 people?
So I am going to let you get back to your day because I know there's a time difference and it's your day off, Chris. So I wanted to respect your time. But before we go, I just
Okay.
wanted to ask you what's next? You planning a honeymoon? I know you just moved house.
New house. Look at me. I know you wanted to say hi to him. He
Of
was a
course I
puppy.
did. I know he's so big now.
He got
My
a
gosh.
really dirty,
Yeah.
but
It'll grow out. It's
It'll
okay,
grow out.
Luca. You still look
Yeah.
cute.
he was our fourth on all of our planning
Yeah.
video call.
And one day he'll come to
but
Victoria.
Yes. Oh my God.
Somehow.
Dude, what is next for us? We just moved to a new home and we will eventually plan a honeymoon, TBD. Not decided where yet. I feel like
That's a big move.
this summer, after every craziness of last summer, like we don't, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have earned it. That's for sure.
Also, at some point, I think what's next is we have to get back out to Victoria and take you out to make up for being the worst clients, but then also for missing you in Puerto Vallarta.
But at least it wasn't this week.
We'll someday talk you into coming to Atlanta so you can visit us and Kara. She would love that. She'll take you to her new favorite place. I don't know if Jimbo told you about going to the
Claremont Lounge.
Claremont Lounge. That's a story for.
It's always a pleasure to chat with Chris and Alex. I'm really looking forward to their next visit to Victoria and catching up with them in person. And hopefully, I'll be able to make the trip over to Atlanta too. Next, we're going to talk to Abigail and Elliot. They got married at Halley Castle as well, but in 2023. They also had the added experience of planning a wedding through the pandemic and reimagining their wedding a couple of times over. Let's hear what they have to say. Welcome, Abigail and Elliot, to the show. Thank you so much. Can you share your pronouns and where you're recording from?
Thanks for having us. So I'm Abigail, she, her,
I'm Elliot.
and we're recording from our house in Victoria, BC.
Can you share Wedding Day 1.0 with me?
So I had called vendors before COVID and had scheduled meetings to talk about the food and stuff. And then COVID happened. We were like, okay, well, it's obviously not happening right now. So then we planned a wedding for 2021, and we planned most of it while we were still in Ottawa. So when Elliot was talking about the trip out west, it's because we were still in Ottawa at the time. So we lived in Ottawa, which is where we met, and where Elliot grew up. So yeah, we were like, we're gonna do it there, was our thinking, and we found a venue, but it was just a little estate on Airbnb that was owned by a very wealthy person. And it was one of their many houses. We were going to bring everything in, and we found a chef that we really liked that was doing reasonable after several vendors made me cry. And then we had a wedding planner for that as well. But it was going to mean bringing everything in. So the plan had been that we'd have the ideal plan was that we would have our ceremony up top at this estate. We'd have a big dinner with the full moon rising behind us down at the field at the base of this estate, and a party behind the estate. And that we would stay on site. And some people would be able to camp on site and some people would just go elsewhere. But we would not be that far from the city, so it wouldn't really be a big deal.
Can you tell me why some vendors made you cry?
When I was first calling vendors before COVID, I called a few that were catering vendors, and one of them catered weddings, and they were also in the process of opening their own event space. We don't come from a very wealthy background at all, and so I felt pretty out of my depth, and I didn't know what was appropriate, and I didn't yet have a planner at that stage of things that I could talk to about that stuff. I so I'd called them, and then they got back to me with, I'd asked for the costing of a seated dinner. I don't remember for how many people, but I'd asked for a menu that they had an equivalent version of served from their food truck that they had. So it wasn't that or native a menu, but it was dishes I knew that they made. And so when they priced it out for me, it was going to be something at least 15 to 20 grand for the food. It was going to be so much money. And I was like,
it was double. It was basically, once we did more research after this, because they're the first people we reached out to because we really liked their food and really wanted to have them cater it. But afterwards, when we would reach out to caterers, we found out that they were charging in fact, I said double, but I honestly,
triple.
I think it was triple to 4 times.
And I was, that I understand, totally, that's fair. And some of the costs were staff costs, which so supportive of and really believe in paying people a living wage. Some aspects of it, I was totally, it's fine. But some aspects of it, I was confused by. So then I asked them if there was a different menu we could do, if they had recommendations. And they said that for something like 7 grand, they could do a stand-up stations with corn, and where they would just barbecue pieces of corn and that's a protein, but that it would just stand up, serve yourself kind of casual barbecue situation. And we didn't have that many guests for the wedding. So it was just they're really mean about it. So when I was can you just confirm what other options there might be? Because I think that's outside of our budget, which a budget inherently, but it was more than I expected something would cost. They just yelled at me a bunch about staff costs, COVID and all of these things until I was sobbing on the phone. I found out that that was a pretty common experience with that vendor, that other people had had similar experiences, and that the person we ended up hiring for to be our chef had used to work with that vendor and knew them well and knew how much they yelled. But I was just like insecure about like whether or not my expectations were realistic at the time. And so I just like didn't know. It just made me feel really like poor in a way, like really like unsure of myself,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
And like also like what are you getting yourself into? What
Yeah.
if what you had imagined was completely out of your scope of your budget that you did have in mind?
Yeah. Yeah. When I say it like made me feel poor, I just mean that it made me feel like I come from a working class background. I feel like I just like didn't have the skills or tool set. And it made me feel like I didn't belong or deserve to be engaging in this conversation, or that I needed to prove that I could afford it in order to be like welcome in the conversation at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess that is a huge barrier for weddings because I think a lot of people get sold the Pinterest dream or whatever you see on Instagram, and then they start realizing, oh no, that is a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Yeah.
The wedding planner we did hire to work with, like pretty soon after that food situation, her vision is really narrow in terms of what a wedding could look like. And I was feeling increasingly like the wedding industry was not able to meet the goal of a wedding that wasn't just really super heteronormative and individual based. And so it was feeling a bit frustrating in how limited we were feeling in relationship to what that wedding could even look like. And then other things were being like slowly eroded as well. Like the dinner down in the field became a dinner by the house, but that wasn't what was like agreed to when we did the tour with the wedding planner. Like everything had been, we'd confirmed that everything was feasible, and then slowly it became less and less feasible. There wasn't going to be time to decorate or anything, and it was just becoming, a lot more stressful, but with a lot less payoff potentially. And so that combined with the fact that we moved out west and we realized that we loved the West Coast so much and the beauty of the West Coast and just wanted to be able to show people how gorgeous it was and have them here, helped us make the decision to shift the wedding. So we ended up canceling that wedding. Again, because of the context of COVID, it was also better because we knew it would just be like safer because it was still pretty, in 2021, it was obviously still very difficult and unsafe in various ways navigating COVID. And we didn't have a lot of faith that it would feel distinctly different enough by the time 2022 came around. And because my sister has complex health conditions, that risk felt really untenable. And so that was a piece of the puzzle as well. So we canceled that wedding, which was fine. We got lucky. I mean, our vendors all really understood, and there was a lot of flexibility because we had done it from a place that was maybe a little bit less of a traditional way of going about things. It made it easier, I think, than other weddings might have been to cancel. And then, the other piece of that puzzle was that we wanted to have someone we loved marry us. So we decided to cancel that wedding, go on our honeymoon in advance of our wedding, and before our honeymoon, get legally married in Toronto on our way out to Europe. And by getting legally married, then we knew we'd be able to have someone we loved marry us at our ceremony, at our wedding that we invited all of our friends and family to. And we decided to, just go all out and get married at Hatley Castle and search for a wedding planner that would be able to work with us to create something that felt a little bit more inclusive and represented us better.
And that planner was me. Spoiler alert. Can you tell me what things you were looking for the second time around in a planner, having already worked with one?
I think the first and foremost is we really just, our community is queer and has disabilities and is racialized. Our community is, a complex community of people that we love deeply. We didn't want, as a like hetero presenting couple, I felt really uncomfortable having a wedding that just looked like really hyper focused on us and really focused on like the idea of like the bride and the groom. And it felt really individualistic and really out of line with the community sort of based politic that we practice. And so I was really struggling with that. And I was finding that the industry like really had no scripts that weren't really standard scripts of really isolating the bride and the groom from the rest of the community and having them exist in their own kind of bubble in a way that just didn't feel like it was actually acknowledging the work of community and how relationships thrive and exist and how they work in relationship to other people as well, right? And so I was looking really hard for a planner that had a lens that could take all of that in and help us figure out a way to have a wedding that wouldn't feel so scripted. And that's why we reached out to you. I mean, we were just like so amazed by some of the work that you had done, and just like by your perspective. And the first time we met, I just felt like you really understood what it was that we were trying to accomplish.
And can you tell me a little bit about when you were going through the planning process? Like, did anything like become really apparent to you that you didn't really need to fuss about that too much?
I think there were some things that we knew we didn't need to, like, I didn't need to get my makeup professionally done. I don't regret not doing that. I feel like that was the right choice. We wanted to spend time with the people we had in town, but not do these like exclusive dinners and stuff that isolated everyone else from the situation.
I think one thing, and I'm sure that's not the case for like all couples, but I was very worried in the context of our wedding, like if people are gonna like have a good time and have fun. And so we got a dance floor because I was like, okay, we need like some way to like get people like moving. And ultimately it wasn't used that much, but that doesn't mean that like nobody had, because it was like such a fun event and everyone was there just
Such a
chat.
good time.
And like
Yeah.
in a way, I almost kind of like regret bringing a dance floor
Yeah.
because it kind of just felt like it was this unnecessary piece of it that we
Yeah.
didn't really need because we were just there to be with our people.
I really loved our flowers. Yeah. I didn't care if it was a specific flower.
I know also we went back and forth on candles because Hatley Castle being a heritage property, they can't have real candles anymore. In the end, I remember you saying, I don't like how fake candles look, so we're not going to have them at all.
And it just didn't matter at all. Yeah, that's a really good one as well. Some of those pieces, like they feel like, because you have a vision for the ambiance of the space, right? But ultimately, the ambience of the space is so much more about who's connecting with who, and like that people have those ideas to, yeah, I think feel the warmth of the space. And it doesn't really matter if there's a certain little detail there or not.
Definitely. And I want to go back to when we were talking about inclusivity and talking about being a couple that presents as being heteronormative. Did you find that you needed to somehow prove that you were something other than a heteronormative couple to people as you were going through the wedding space?
I think that it was more just that there was a lot of assumptions about what it means for us and what the intention of it was for us. And I think that that baseline assumption meant that it was really hard to create anything that was outside of that, beyond that. So it's not so much about like the assumption that like we're straight, but it's more the ways in which there was an assumption about how we exist in the world and what we would be looking for and wanting for from vendors, which just like felt really out of touch with what we actually were looking for and wanting. Yeah. But that meant we just found some really wonderful vendors. So it's okay. But it was just like hard. I think even just like all of the things that, yeah, the baseline around like what wedding gear people are selling for resale that we could maybe reuse. Everything would say bride and groom on it, or like cake toppers, all these like little details that you're just like, I don't think this is key to how I understand myself.
So, with that too, I know that it was really important for both of you to feel like your community was also being included in many different ways. Can you share how you did that in your day?
The part of it was like we didn't have a lot of like big wedding parties that sort of isolated some people from other people. My sister was our maid of honor, but that was our only sort of like role in our wedding. And that was just to recognize her role in our family. My sister lives with us. We are her caregivers, and we really wanted to recognize her role and relationship to us. There were so many ways in which we tried to just reinvent funny in the ways things were spoken about. So my really close friend, who's also known Elliot for a decade, Dana, who's non-binary, was our officiant, and we just tried to create a space that was like really queer friendly and that people were recognized in, just like seeing that they were such a part of our community as well. And they did a really good job of framing the ceremony and doing a really intentional land acknowledgement, because Dana and I and Elliot wrote it together, the three of us, so that it would be really intentionally informed by all of our perspectives. We tried to find traditions, and we worked with you, Rod, to sort of figure out some that would be a little bit more about recognizing our community. So we had a moment in our ceremony where we did the thing where we passed the ring around and have everyone give their wishes for us. We also had a moment where we thanked our community in their ceremony, with them and acknowledge them. And we also had a moment where we asked our community to stand up and acknowledge their role and what they were committing to in relationship to us as well. So those were both core moments in our ceremony. We had some close friends also readings, I think, which is a bit more common. And then my favorite thing that we did, which wasn't in our ceremony but was after, was our seating chart, which was all each person's seat number was on a envelope with a personal letter telling them how much they mean to us and why, that we wrote for each person who attended our wedding.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
really nice.
it was beautiful. It was so exciting to give them that and to give them the space to read that and just know that we recognize the work of coming to see us.
How they like have brought us to where we are and have shaped who we are and
Yeah.
helped us be in the world.
We had our photographer do portraits of all of our guests so that they'd have something to take home. I think in the end, he actually had them all think about why they love each other.
Yeah.
It was maybe even more meaningful.
I also really loved your moment where you acknowledged the community because you could tell that there was some surprised faces from where I was standing where, nobody had been asked to do that before.
I mean, it was
Yeah.
so hard to find scripts for those things, you know?
I don't know if we did. I think we just kind of
Oh, some parts we
Yeah.
found examples of and edited, and some parts we just made space for ourselves. Yeah. But
Mhm.
it just felt grateful to be able to, yeah, just to have a small shift in the script at least that allowed it to be a
Mhm.
moment of connection. And I think that meant that, I mean, it meant that we just had these like bigger moments of connection with all of our guests throughout because that space had been sort of afforded and noted. And yeah, and that's what like paved the way for that.
And I know the dance floor moment too. I remember us going back and forth on when to have the group photo that you wanted. I think you had it in your vision that you wanted bubbly being passed to people as you were having your first dance, and then everybody joining you on the dance floor with the bubbles. And I remember saying, okay, we can do that, but I don't want to take anyone out of the moment of your first dance. We do it a little differently.
And I think ultimately, like, it played out so well.
And what happens is when you're so close to something, it's easy to get caught up in that movie magic, you know?
Yeah, I think that there's just so
Yeah.
much content. I was on TikTok then, and not anymore, but I was, and it's like there's just so much content and potential, and people obviously like hire people sometimes to record their whole day, or they hire a social media person for their whole day. And I think ultimately there's so many things already in the way that the wedding day happens that can take you out of it and make it really hard to be present. And I feel really grateful that we didn't integrate those aspects of things so that we weren't distracted or trying to create space for these moments that wouldn't be as impactful in our long-term memory and our guest memories as the moments to connect would be, you know.
Yeah. I mean, like I think we had like just one, and so it felt more when we came down the steps to the
Sisters.
succession.
Yeah.
And so that felt because we just had that one that was sort of like a little goof. It felt like more memorable in that way because it was just this sort of like one little piece that like can be I don't know. There's lots to remember, but something
Yeah,
A
I
good
mean,
moment.
a
that
good
moment
moment.
was pretty epic, especially with both of you in your outfits and the
Yeah.
music.
Because I think it like gave us moment for our personalities to sort of like
Yeah.
take a moment,
Yeah.
take a beat.
And then I know too with the menu, you were also very conscious of it being West Coast and being small. Can you take me through how you built that out?
Yeah, I mean that was a big part of it too, because we knew so many people would be coming from Ontario to see us. It really mattered a great deal to us that we could show a menu that was connected to this place.
And we were still pretty fresh to BC ourselves, so we're still kind of learning what that looks like. But it felt like a good opportunity to kind of share in that with our community too.
Yeah, so we just worked with the caterer to try and showcase some of the
Yeah.
the things that we love, having fresh fish. And I'm trying to remember our menu, but I remember having really intentional
I
goals
think there
around
was like
it.
Dungeness crab salad or something like that. Like,
Yeah, that does
yeah,
sound
that sounds
familiar. We wanted to make sure that there was multiple courses so that there was multiple different like things for people to experience and enjoy. Developed the menu and then worked with our graphic designer, who was my brother, to create specialized menu cards that spoke to what was meaningful for us about each dish.
I'm going to share some of the photos from the setup because that was one of the unique setups we had in the castle. I had to like start doing some math to make sure that it all worked. But the horseshoe shape, was that also part of the community effect, or was it more that you saw a photo like that and you wanted to incorporate that kind of vibe into the day?
Look, a circular table situation is really beautiful, but it was about the community effect as well. I was feeling like so often at weddings, the bride and groom and their wedding party are separated off from everyone else. And it's like really means that a huge part of the wedding is spent away from the majority of the people that are there to spend it with you. And B, yeah, it just creates this like platform that feels really out of touch with how I experience life, and how we experience life. And so it was really important to me to have a table set up that was circular to ensure that we could be amongst our guests and talk to people and like be one of them.
Borg.
It felt more intimate.
Thing that you would do differently?
Is there anything you would do differently?
Well, I think like the one hiccup in our day, and I think we always have, unavoidable to have a hiccup, but we had some wedding photos for the day of, and Abby in a white dress, just got a little mucky. It's not nothing crazy, but enough to like make it a little dirty. And I think that like, intentions are high and like and you want things to go 100% perfectly. Something like that can really like throw you for a second. And so I don't know. I think we moved through it pretty quickly.
With Rat's help.
Yeah, with Rat's help, yeah, totally. But I think like I think it added more pressure to it than needed to be. And I think we could have done something a little bit more, a little less involved, or just timed it differently.
Yeah, I loved our photos.
Yeah,
I
great
wouldn't
photos.
just back personally because I think, yeah, it was like a way of saying where we are and how beautiful it is where we are. And that really was wonderful. Might have, suggested that we do those photos the day after the wedding in some ways later. Like, I do feel like, yeah, those photos could have easily been done. I was doing my own makeup, so I wasn't going to look substantially that different on a different day. And I think that might have saved me stress of having the bottom of my dress be mucky before I walked down the aisle.
I think there's probably some time stress to that too. Made the day feel a little bit more
Crunch.
compressed, trying to fit that in. And I think the when you're able to get into the joy of the wedding, it's because you have that kind of like freedom and you're able to like lean into it a little bit more. And that didn't happen until like midway through the ceremony. I feel like because we're so making sure we're hitting the beats and getting where we need to get on time and doing the things we need to do when they need to be done. And I think removing that would have just like up just
Some ease?
give us a little bit more ease. Yeah.
Yeah. And we loved our photographers so much. I still interact with them on social media. They're wonderful people. Like, they're so wonderful. I just would have timed it differently. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
that's a
think
good-
some of that comes down to the venue too, because they have such strict timelines for when you can access and when you need to be out.
I thought that would feel tighter than it did in practice. I was exhausted. I was like ready to go home. So was everyone else, and it was fantastic in that way. But yeah, I think that's a fair thing to change.
Sitting here talking to you, I just remembered we had that something that like, planning for the unplanned. Your original car, the driver got into an accident and we had to find you another car.
Yeah, it was definitely like within the last week for
Yeah.
sure, which isn't a lot of time when it comes to
But that also worked out really well. I ended up liking the car that we found to replace it better than the one that we were supposed to have originally.
I know Instagram and TikTok were a thing then, but I feel like it's like this monster. And are you happy you got married then instead of now?
It definitely was like the beginning of like, a lot of like champagne towers happening on TikTok, a lot of, like really big moments. I think a lot of inflated expectations of what's feasible, when in reality, like most of those champagne towers will be happening at a venue that doesn't want a champagne tower. You know what I mean? Like it's you want to get married somewhere beautiful, you have to think about the impact on that space as well, and all of those sort of different considerations. But I'm not on wedding TikTok now, so it's hard to know how much worse it could be.
That is fair. So any vow renewal plans then?
Well, it's been.
I mean, that was wedding 2.0. So
and it's only been like less than 3 years. I think we got a little space still before we have to think about that.
Yes, that is true. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited that we have a relationship after the wedding, and I'm sure I'll see you soon.
And thank you so much for giving us a chance to talk about it and relive it. It's been nice just to think about it and yeah, be reminded of all the beautiful parts of it that we love so much.
It was so nice to catch up with Abigail and Elliot and talk all about their wedding day. So, I do have some news. This is the very last episode of That's Rad. I'm so grateful to all of our guests, all of your support, and I hope you all stay rad.
Can you get into the funk tonight? Can you stomp to the beat and sway to the right? Can you feel it deep down in your soul? Can you dance to the rhythm and lose control? Can you let it move you, let it choose you? Get in the funk and the funk will flow through you. Up and down, you'll be bouncing like a yo-yo, feeling frisky, dancing at the disco. Let's get up and dance. You got me bounce, 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 bouncing like yo-yo. Can you feel my heart beat fast? Can you make the moment last? Can I hold you in my trance? My cannon fire in my magic dance. I really groove you, I wanna choose you. Pull up a seat and watch the music move you. Getting lost in the moment, we'll go crazy for each other, dancing at the disco. Can you get into the funk tonight? Can you stomp to the beat and sway to the right? Can you feel it deep down in your soul? Can you dance to the rhythm and lose control? Can you